we're only a couple of weeks away from a welterweight matchup that literally nobody asked for or expected. But once you really look into it, it does have the potential to be a very explosive and entertaining matchup based on each of the fighters' style. Yes, I'm talking about the return of Keith one time Thurman against El Azteca Mario Barrios this upcoming February 5th on Fox pay per view. Now, whether this fight really belongs in the pay per view format is subjective to each fan. Everybody has different opinions, but that's not what we're going to be discussing today. Today, I'm actually going to be going over what I expect for this matchup and the advantages and disadvantages of each fighter coming into this fight. Now, first glance, you do know that both of these guys are coming off of defeats, right? Keith lost a majority decision or split decision against Manny Pacquiao back before pre-pandemic times, goddamn. And Mario Barrios suffered a knockout against Gervonta Davis this past June. So it's been a while for Mario Barrios too, right? As well as both these guys being former champions. Though I don't really think Mario Barrios count as a champion. To me, I'm sorry, the WBA has a lot of belts, and Mario Barrios did also get captured this belt, I believe, in 2018, and it was a secondary belt. If I'm not mistaken, it was Regis Prograis who was the real WBA champ at the time, and now it's Josh Taylor, right? Like it's not that it was a hanky panky belt. Now, of course, Keith Thurman did face a little bit of criticism when this fight was announced because they expected him to come back against somebody who was already established in the welterweight division, as opposed to somebody like Mario Barrios, who is off a defeat coming up to the welterweight division to try to see if he can belong in this division and try to make it a fight into a new weight class, right? And while I do feel like some criticism is valid, I think fans really need to lower their expectations in regards to Keith Thurman and his inactivity. In the podcast with Brian Custard, Keith really did mention that he was supposed to face Abel Ramos, who is in the undercard of this pay per view event, but he chose Mario Barrios because he is a former champion and he only has one loss, just like Keith Thurman only has one loss, right? So I do feel like, mixing Abel Ramos and Mario Barrios, I think stylistically and based on Keith Thurman's explanation, I do think he was the best choice as opposed to Abel Ramos. So after taking a look at those two very obvious things, both guys have one loss, both guys used to be former champs, both guys are coming off that one loss, and that both of these guys definitely need this victory to prove that they deserve bigger fights, right? Those are the main things that we have both from both of these fighters. But now let's get into the advantages and disadvantages of each fighter. And of course, we're going to start with Mario Barrios. And before I talk about the advantages and disadvantages of Mario Barrios, I really just want to give him a fucking shout out for this being his fourth consecutive pay per view and second consecutive pay per view headline. Because even though a lot of people again disagree that this should be a pay per view, his fan friendly style and just, overall great grit that he shows in the ring allows him to be able to land these pay per view slots, right? Because let's not forget that his first pay per view, he did capture that WBA hanky panky belt, right, against Akhmedov in what I believe was the undercard for Errol Spence versus Sean Porter. So he went and captured this belt on pay per view platform. Then he went on to defend that belt against Ryan Caro, the Cowboy, in a very spectacular knockout victory in the undercard of Gervonta Davis against Leo Santa Cruz. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And then he, of course, went to face Gervonta Davis himself in that fight that actually got him a lot of fans, regardless of him losing a knockout defeat to Gervonta. He was headlining pay per view as a champ, and now he has this pay per view against a long reigning former champ in Keith one time Thurman. So shout out to him because he's getting the bag, and again, given his style, I'm not mad at him. I'm not mad at him at all. Well, let's talk about his advantages against a Keith Thurman. His advantages I'm just gonna say it, are not that great. They really aren't. Does have a couple inches on the reach, which I think could prove very useful if he knows how to use it. And as we saw against Tank Davis, especially in the earlier rounds in the first half of the fight, he did know how to set up that distance with Gervonta, at least in the first half of the fight, right? And while I honestly can't say I can give Mario Barrios too much advantage over Keith Thurman based on skill, I do feel like his youth over Keith Thurman and his grit inside the ring can definitely prove too much for an inactive fighter in Keith Thurman, who still shows as inactive on BoxRec. Wherever works on BoxRec, figure that out. But also because a lot of people have felt like Keith's inactivity means that he's lost love for the sport, that he's only in it for the money now, that this fight is literally only so that he can retire with money if he loses, and that's fine, right? And we saw guys like Tim Bradley say shit like that, like that he feels that Keith Thurman is just kind of this guy who's just kind of in it for the money now. He doesn't really care about becoming a champ again. But will that be true or not? I feel like we're gonna see based on how Keith Thurman not just performs because ring rust is a bitch, but how we see him react to the pressure of Mario Barrios, right? So I guess to sum all that up, does Mario Barrios do something better than Keith Thurman? Does he jab better than Keith Thurman? Does he have a better ring generalship than Keith Thurman? Does he have better power than Keith Thurman? Does he have better footwork than Keith Thurman? I don't think so. I don't think he has anything that you look at Barrios and be like, damn, that dude does something real. This does this particular thing so well, and he's gonna cause problems to this guy because of this. But I think it's not much of Barrios having advantages as much as it's Keith Thurman having disadvantages that Mario Barrios can definitely capitalize on, right? So with that being said, let's move on to Keith. Sometimes, once upon a time, Thurman. Keith Thurman is one of those cases that if you heard my lives, he it really kind of irks me how he had it all, right? He definitely was that bitch at 147 for a long time. And I think with Keith Thurman, he lost a lot of momentum, right? He was fighting really great fights. He had a really good back-to-back streak with, let's say, Guerrero, Luis Collazo, a great fucking fight against Sean Porter, a great fucking unification with Danny Garcia, which in my opinion was probably one of my favorite performances. Both Porter and Garcia, probably one of my favorite performances. And then he kind of disappeared. Then came back against Josito Lopez, which he got criticized a lot for that fight. And then now comes back against Manny Pacquiao pre-pandemic. And then he kind of disappears once again. Again, in referencing that podcast he did with Brian Custard, he did mention that he got offered to come back in a fight in the bubble, but he turned it down, which, in my opinion, why turn it down? I feel like that would have been a great opportunity to get the ring rust off, to come back 2022 and maybe take one more fight, a Barrios fight, right? Now, kind of a step up, right? And then the EJs or the Crawfords of the world, right? I don't understand why he said no to a fight in the bubble. I believe he said he had COVID, which again is kind of a disadvantage. We've seen fighters who kind of come off of COVID not being the same. You know, with someone like Keith Thurman, the style that Mario Barrios is coming with is no really anything new for Keith Thurman, who all I have to say is he fought Sean Porter in his prime. He fought the best Sean Porter that a lot of people. I feel like that was the best Sean Porter, the Sean Porter that fought Keith Thurman. And so if Keith Thurman can go toe to toe and be there at the forefront with Sean Porter, then Mario Juarez is not going to be that deep, right? But again, we got to remember this was 2016 is what, like, I don't know how many years ago. So maybe not. But now, Danny Garcia, Keith gets a lot of shit for that Danny Garcia fight, and a lot of people claim that it was close. I personally don't think that fight was that close. I think Keith Thurman won that very comfortably, and he's stupid for taking the last rounds off, but I still think that Keith Thurman won that very, very, very comfortably. Now, with Josecito Lopez, I feel like Mario Barrios has the possibility to make this fight be like the Josecito Lopez fight. Keith could have made that his oopsie moment, right? Because he got hurt by Josecito Lopez, and I'm not necessarily putting Josecito Lopez down or downplaying him as a fighter because Josecito Lopez, he's a decent fighter. But you shouldn't be getting tagged like that against someone who's not on your level, right? And all of that is due to what? In my opinion, inactivity, right? Inactivity. He slipped up. Inactivity caused Thurman to get caught by Jose de Lopez. And inactivity can definitely be the reason why Keith Thurman kind of takes the same punches against a Mario Barrios, a hungry Mario Barrios, right? Now let's talk about the Manny Pacquiao fight because Manny Pacquiao is so loved. People saw this fight as him dominating Keith Thurman, and I see that shit a lot online where people are like, "Oh, Keith got dominated by a 40-year-old little guy." And to be honest, I think that fight was much closer than a lot of people want to admit it is because they're blinded by their love for Manny Pacquiao. I truly, honestly think that fight was very, very close. And I think that, even though Manny Pacquiao wowed us all, especially dropping Keith Thurman in the first fucking round when Keith Thurman hadn't really been down or hurt, it was still a very close fight in my opinion. And I know Keith Thurman is gonna blame COVID, right, on this inactivity, but there's a lot of fighters who continue to fight in COVID, and I feel like Keith Thurman not fighting after the Manny Pacquiao fight was kind of also a mistake. Let's regroup, right? Let's recap, right? Advantages of Barrios: youth, heart, more active than Keith Thurman, and definitely has a style that can prove troublesome for an inactive Keith Thurman, especially because Mario Barrios does not fucking step off of you. Just ask Gervonta Davis, right? But other than that, he doesn't really do anything much better than what we've seen Keith Thurman perform, right? Advantages of Keith Thurman is that he has a much better opposition, right? By far. Most importantly, I think is the inactivity. Like I said earlier, I don't think it's much as Mario Barrios having an advantage over Keith Thurman as much as it is Keith Thurman having disadvantages because of his inactivity, because of the speculation that he's no longer in it for the boxing, but only in it for the money, for just kind of getting one last paycheck, or kind of just being a gatekeeper of the division, which I wouldn't mind. Honestly, I wouldn't mind Keith fighting the Boots of the world, the Virgils of the world, the Connor Benz of the world coming up, right? But that's a story for another fucking video. Let's stick to this. Even with all of that in his disadvantage plate, I do think Keith Thurman has one last go. And I don't want to say last because I don't want it to be his last, but I do think he has a skill level above Mario Barrios that is going to allow him to be able to use his veteran status, his resume, to be able to overcome whatever trouble Mario Barrios brings him. Now, I don't think Mario Barrios can knock out um, Keith Thurman. I do think that his plan should go to the body because even though everybody says, "Oh, this person doesn't like it to the body," I don't think any fighter likes it to the body. But we've seen a couple of times that Keith definitely doesn't like it to the body, right? We saw in his fight against Collazo, and we also saw it against Manny Pacquiao in the ninth round, if I'm not mistaken, when Manny caught him to the body and he literally crushed and was like literally running on the fucking ring like that. So I think Mario Barrios should definitely go to the body and try to slow um Keith Thurman out that way, right? Trying to hurt him that way. I think it'd be easier for Mario Barrios to go to the body with Keith Thurman to definitely try to get the advantage and maybe hurt him because again he's been inactive for so long. We don't know how his stamina is going to be, and definitely getting his air out by going to the body is definitely going to help. But the reason why I still think Keith Thurman wins is because that Manny Pacquiao fight. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, Manny Pacquiao's old," like Keith Thurman lost to an old Manny Pacquiao, but that fight was really a good fight, especially from Keith Thurman. He did really well against Manny Pacquiao, and I think he did well enough to where a split decision against someone like Manny Pacquiao is not that bad. Like I really do think people have like this veil when it comes to Manny Pacquiao that blinds them from anything. And as much as I love Manny Pacquiao, I do think Keith Thurman gave it a really good go. And even though Keith Thurman wasn't as inactive coming into the Pacquiao fight because he had fought Jose Lopez a couple months before, I do think that he should have taken another fight before going to Manny Pacquiao. But who the fuck is gonna turn on a Manny Pacquiao fight? Right, so I do get that, but because he was able to do it so well against the fucking legend in there, like Manny Pacquiao, and he was able to beat Danny Garcia with a different style that he was able to beat Sean Porter with, and he was able to survive against Josecito Lopez, I think he can definitely survive against an upcoming Mario Barrios in this division specifically. right? I honestly just think Thurman's going to do better than Mario Barrios, though I really would love for Thurman to knock out Mario Barrios to make it a big statement. And not because I'm this fucking Keith Thurman super fan. My name's not Miguel on Twitter. No offense. But only because, wow, how fucking awesome would that be for the division? When you look at it again, it's almost like Keith Thurman was this fucking top dude in the division, disappeared, and in the meanwhile, guys like Errol Spence and Crawford kind of took over that bitch, right? They both managed to take over their side of the division as Keith Thurman just kind of laid in the shadows, once being that bitch, right? And imagine how cool it would be if Keith Thurman makes his badass return, right? He makes a statement, knocks out Mario Barrios, and then he's like, yeah, I'm back, motherfuckers. Would I want Keith Thurman to right away jump in with Errol Spence or with Crawford? No. I would still like him to do kind of another fight like Mario Barrios or the B level motherfuckers at PBC, right? I would love that. But how cool would that be, right? To get the guy who was once at the top now be at the top again. That would be great for the division, in my opinion. And I would love to see him against Errol Spence or Crawford. Errol Spence has already talked about the fact that he doesn't want to look at Keith Thurman's way because he's kind of salty that Keith Thurman didn't give him an opportunity back when Errol Spence was trying to be champion, right? He says he ducked them. So now Errol Spence is kind of like, well, now you're not getting a piece of me because you ducked me when you were champion, right? But Crawford and um Thurman's, they had their little Twitter shit before. They've talked about possibly fighting before. So I would love to see that. If Mario Barrios were to beat a Keith Thurman, I don't think that, as cool as that would be, I don't think he would be able to beat someone else at the welterweight division, someone like Errol or Crawford, right? So it will kind of be like, okay, well, cool, he won, and that's cool. Like maybe he can fight. Maybe again, we talked about the other PBC guys at welterweight, or maybe the up and comers like Connor Ben, Virgil Ortiz, or Boots Ennis, right? But in my opinion, he would just be food for all of them, right? So what would we get out of that? Nothing really as boxing fans. But if Keith wins, it'd be like, oh, bam, he's back in this bitch, right? And that's what, as a boxing fan, that's what I want. But honestly, that's looking too much forward into the future. Um, I think none of these guys have much to win on winning, right? That's what I mentioned. This is fight that I think is just good for the fans. Like it's gonna be a rock and boat Sock'em Bop'em Robots type of fight is going to be entertaining. It's going to be a great type of fight. Who, if you don't want to pay for the pay per view by yourself, you can invite some friends over, hopefully who have been tested before coming over, and split the fucking bill. Invite some homies over, make some fucking pozole, some ceviche, have a party, right? Like have a responsible party at home and split the cost. And it's gonna be a fun fight. This fight is going to be a fun fucking fight. I don't think there's any denying that. But none of these guys really got much to win. If Mario Barrios beats Keith Thurman, I think fans are really gonna be like, yeah, well, he fucking beat a washed Thurman. Thurman, he was already washed. He was inactive for a long time. He had already lost to Pacquiao. He was only in it for the money, right? There's all these buts that come with that boxing fans love to throw out, but especially this one, right? And then if Keith does beat Mario Barrios, is gonna be, especially if he doesn't knock him out, if it's just like a win, they're gonna be like, oh, well, look at Keith Thurman. He barely beat or he couldn't finish a Mario Barrios, who someone small like Tank Davis already knocked out, right? And oh, what does that prove? He wasn't a natural 147, right? So the excuses are gonna come up regardless of who wins. But that's why I feel like I want Keith to win because it would be more monumental for the weight class itself. But I rambled long enough. It's gonna be a great fight. Like I mentioned, if you don't want to pay for it, I think it's like $70, $80, some crazy shit like that. Invite friends over responsibly, have some drinks, have some ceviche, and split the cost. Do a raffle, right, to get that money back. And then, if not, go ahead and go to Las Vegas once again responsibly, right? Get your boosters. Omicron is fucking crazy right now. Get your boosters, go out there and enjoy that fight in person, right? Whatever you choose to do, let me know if you agree or disagree with my rambling. Do you think Keith Thurman's gonna win? Do you want him to lose? Do you not want Keith Thurman to ever come back? Or do you want him to lose so that he can get that gatekeeper status? Or do you want him to win so that he can fight Errol Spence or Crawford? Or do you not care about this fight? Do you think Mario Barrios can definitely overcome someone like Keith Thurman? Whatever you think, whatever your thoughts are, drop them in the comment section. Don't forget to like, subscribe, send this to all your abuelitos, your tias, your Sanchas, and your Sanchos so I can get more subscribers. Okay. I'll see you guys next time. And yes, I will be in attendance to this fight. So if you do see me out there, don't forget to say hi. And I'll see you guys on the next